This is Live from the Table, the official podcast of the world famous comedy seller, coming at you on Sirius XM 99 Raw Dog and wherever podcasts are available. This is Dan Naturman. I'm joined in studio with Maddie Wiener.
Hello, thank you for having me.
She's a comedian, and she is, she's a comedian, and she's in studio. But nobody else is in studio because Noam's in Wells, Maine, at his summer home in the Kennebunkport area.
Not my summer home. I'm renting a space for 2 weeks.
Well, be that as it may, he's in Maine, and Periel is in her,
summer home.
Annual August getaway in Bat Yam, Israel, I believe it is.
No, I'm not in Bat Yam.
Tel Aviv, or whatever
Jesus
the hell she
Christ.
is. Well,
she wouldn't be caught dead in Bat Yam.
No, people that are Israeli apparently look down on Bat Yam, but she's.
I mean, it's like being in Staten Island.
But
What's
or like the Jersey Shore.
My mother-in-law lives in Staten Island.
Okay, that's fine, but you're not going vacationing there, are you?
Bat Yam is nice. It's like south of Tel Aviv. It's nice.
Anyway, let's not get bogged down in Israeli geography. We have a who's coming on? Lenny Aronson will be joining us in a bit, but before that,
Professor Louise Aronson, and hi, Maddie. Nice to.
Dan, are you an imbecile? So listen, I have a sentimental attachment to Bat Yam because when I was in college, I spent a semester in Israel, and I got offered a job in the hotel, Marina Hotel in Bat Yam, to play. They were going to put me for the whole summer as a guitarist, and it was with my like Simon and Garfunkel guy with me, and he was homesick, so we didn't take the gig. But anyway, go ahead.
How have you never told me that?
First of all, no, Maddie, I don't know if you're aware. The other night they did. Were you involved with the Regal Theater thing?
No, but I heard about it.
Well, the other night what they did is they sort of simulcast, or whatever the word would be, a comedy seller show to 48 theaters at the Regal Theater chain across the country. And I'm wondering how it went.
Well, Dan, you might have cleared this with me before we got on the air. I don't know how it went because, first of all, it definitely wasn't 48 theaters because the one in New Rochelle had something crash, and the one here in not in Maine but just south of here in New Hampshire that I had planned my whole trip around canceled the show because they wanted to make more room for Barbie and Oppenheimer. So I actually don't know how it went, but I heard that where some people I know saw it in New York, it was very good, but I don't think it was a big draw around the country. Some people on my team would like to say that's because of Barbie and Oppenheimer, but I think it may not be that. I think it may just not be an idea that either is a good idea or it may take a while to actually catch on.
Okay, so it's not for sure that you're going to do another round, or that's not for sure.
That's a good question. So this is the first time since I started out in show business, as it were, like in the Cafe Wa. It's the first time I ever actually took a loss. On any. Now this wasn't my idea. I'm not trying to throw anybody, but it wasn't my idea. So I can rationalize it to myself. But it's the first time anything I did lost money, and it bothers me. The money is not a lot of money. The money's not what's bothering me. I don't love that. But it's really honestly, sincerely not what's bothering me. It's just that I found myself doing this when I don't know. I kind of saw it coming and didn't get out of the way. My phone's saying. So anyway, I'm very frank, Dan. I probably shouldn't be so frank on these shows and stuff like that. But that's the way I feel about it. It's like it didn't go like it should have.
All right. Well, every great businessman, has some losses. So you got it out of the way, and. Anyway, so we won't discuss it further, I suppose.
I don't mind.
Other than the fact that, I'll be happy to do the next one. I don't know what your criteria are for who gets on the show.
Oh, but as he booked the show, okay. It wasn't about the show. The show was actually quite good as far as I could tell, and people in the theater were laughing. There's a question about whether or not, since everybody has unlimited access to comedy all the time on their phones, on their TVs, on YouTube. It's just like whether or not people want to pay for anything, let alone go to the movie theater. I don't know the answer to that. I think maybe it would be better to have like a midnight or 11 o'clock Saturday night nasty show in movie theaters, like just really filthy
Maddie,
comedy.
can you bring the nasty if needs be?
I would. That's my favorite thing in the world.
Okay.
But I'd say it would be cool if that like sort of paved the way for like people releasing specials in theaters again and having
Yes.
premieres. That would be kind of incredible to see that happen in stand up.
Yeah. So the conversation I had with the guys afterwards, I said, we now we have a pipeline into movie theaters. The question is, did we present what's best at that? And one of the things, exactly what you said, I said, maybe we should do some specials, like, premiere in movie theaters, especially some people with a name, they can get some kind of buzz, one night only, and then they can still release it into, streaming or whatever it is, just like the movies are then released to streaming. And there's a lot of people with names that would be able to draw. And the economics are, I mean, they could actually make a lot of money, but even if they didn't make any money, it's still kind of cool. And there's not much loss because you can't record it. You can't, it really is one and done. So live streaming, I mean, in the movies, new specials, or like I said, I always think there's a market for dirty stuff. In Montreal at the Just for Laughs festival, the Nasty Show is always like 10 times a hotter ticket than any other show. It's just everybody likes that stuff.
Esty put me on the 10 p.m. What's that called? The Uncensored Show?
I don't know. Yeah.
She calls it like late night uncensored. It was last Tuesday, I think, or a few Tuesdays ago.
You don't have any dirty jokes.
I do, but I'm not nasty per se. I have some nasty stuff, but also every show is uncensored.
Well, this is supposed to emphasize.
Right. They emphasize the nasty. Well, I was as nasty as I could be. I don't get that nasty. Maddie, you are a recent Comedy Cellar person.
Yeah, like 3 weeks in, I think. I'm definitely a baby here.
Yeah, ST's raving about you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Are you emceeing or doing regular spots?
No, it's just been spots. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No, are there people that are passed just to MC, or is that there is a distinction?
I mean, the Ray Allen spot.
Well, whatever. I mean, are there people that you wouldn't, if they said, yeah, I don't feel like I'm seeing anymore, I want to do regular spots, and you would be like, I don't know.
No, I think all the MCs do regular spots. We have had, Ray doesn't put in for regular spots, but he's the only one I think who never does a regular spot.
Well, he enjoys them.
Actually, I don't know if Artie used to do regular spots. Has he done them lately? I don't know.
Maddie Wiener's actually a name that's in my family. My father's sister married a Wiener.
Really?
Yeah.
Also Jewish?
That's correct. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize it's a Jewish name, and to me, I'm like, that's like,
well, are there any
giveaway that I'm Jewish?
Are there any Wieners that aren't Jewish?
That's
was the Meyer Wiener family Jewish?
Probably. I mean, they're in the Frankfurter business, but maybe not.
Was Anthony Wiener?
Well,
what was
Jewish.
That guy?
Yeah.
Now, have you ever thought of, because it is an odd name, changing it?
Yeah, I had, especially when I was a kid, and then I think I got some like pushback from family of like, it's your heritage and blah blah blah. And now I think it's like, all right, maybe a little too late to change it. Like, I've been in the world being this person, and for comedy, it's
comedy it works.
It works.
It works. But
this is the one time.
But do you think John Stewart Leibowitz, had he kept Leibowitz, do you think he would have gotten as far?
Yeah, like would it help or hurt?
I'm going to go so far as to say it would have. No, I don't think he would have gone as far. I think somebody would have probably told him to lose the Leibowitz, but he was like a sexy guy. He was sort of selling that. And I just don't know if John Leibowitz gets the Daily Show. I just don't know. I'm not sure. I think there's reason to believe that he would not.
Jon Stewart's a little easier to say.
I think that the suits over at Comedy Central would have, or the suits even prior to Comedy Central, but he had to, in order for him to get the Comedy Central show, he had to already be kind of in the running. He had to be sort of in the mix, and he'd already done some shows, and I don't know that he would have gotten those shows.
I think second only to Woody Allen, Dan leads the world in like this Jewish neuroticism that he perseverates on these issues. He's asked this question like 1,000
I don't think I've asked this
times.
particular question a
Yes,
thousand
this
times.
particular question.
No,
Oh,
we've talked about whether Jon Stewart was so talented that his success was inevitable.
no.
We've had
You
that
watch this.
discussion.
Watch this, Maddie.
Yeah.
What's Woody Allen's real name?
Alan Konigsberg,
What's Jon Stewart's real name?
John Liebel.
Go through them all. Go through them all. Come on.
What all? I don't know. I don't know. I know like,
Ralph Lauren. Ralph
oh,
Lauren.
that's Ralph Lifshitz.
Oh,
And that absolutely had to be changed because he's in fashion.
who's the guy? Ant-Man. Did he change his name? Because he's Jewish.
Paul
but we don't know
Rudd.
he's Jewish. Paul Rudd.
I don't think he did, but
That
but I'll tell you one thing: Andrew Silverstein ain't fucking doing that act with that name.
Dan,
that you'll
tell
agree with.
what are the rest of the Jewish names? You know the original names. Come on, you know more.
I don't know all of them. I mean,
Tony Curtis.
Jonah Hill.
Tony Curtis is Tony Curtis. I forgot something Schwartz. Jonah Hill. I don't.
Bernie Schwartz. Bernie Schwartz.
Bernie Schwartz. Jonah Hill's not Jonah Hill.
No.
Well, you'll agree with me that Dice had to change his name.
What's Andrew Dice Clay's name?
Andrew Silverstein. There's
Oh.
there's no way Andrew Silverstein comes out and goes, "Hey, it was fucking there." That's just not gonna work.
He remember Ariel? He just rattled them off. He knows like 15 of them.
In any
Like,
case,
you should make trading cards, like baseball cards.
in any case,
Oh,
John.
that's so good.
What was Lenny Bruce's real name?
I don't know. I know
come on.
very little about Lenny Bruce. We're here, by the way, just by way of introduction. Larry Durlofsky sitting in. Maybe he'll chime in. Maybe he won't.
He looks just
We
like
had him
Jerry
on a
Seinfeld.
few weeks ago. He's a psychiatrist and a friend of the show's.
I just watched.
Oh, no way.
And thumbs
you
down, thumbs up.
From a
Obviously,
psychiatrist,
say
can I get a
thumbs up.
diagnosis? Like, was it?
Excellent.
Oh,
Good stuff. Really good stuff.
I think Maddie Wiener is a fine name for somebody that's selling fun and laughter.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a little bit of like a bumbling fat man vibe on stage. I think that's funny. So I think the name, it's good. I'll keep it.
And now that I'm talking, I think Jon Stewart was being considered for like the Tonight Show or one of those late night things, but his Judaism got in the way of that kind of.
Well, I don't know. That may or may not be, but I'm just discussing the last name
No,
issue, and I do think it would have. I do think it would have hindered him. I think he was smart enough to know that, and especially with what he was selling, which was sort of a sexy, cool guy. But Noah may or may not agree. Anyway, Robbie Robertson, by the way, just died. Noam, I don't know if you heard the news.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, for 80 years old. Do you know who he is, Maddie? It could be a generation.
I might not.
He's the lead singer of the band. You know, the band. I mean, it's a band that's called the band.
Oh, I was like,
He was,
Hmm?
he was a very compelling figure in the movie The Last Waltz, the Scorsese thing. Anyway,
And
that's sad that he died. He was a great guitar player.
And Randy Meisner died a couple of weeks ago. And Randy got almost nothing on social media compared to Sinead O'Connor and Pee Wee Herman.
Well, because Randy Meisner was a supporting character.
Right. But yes, he was.
Who's heard of Randy Meisner? Is that Jewish, by the way?
No, he's not. I mean, it could be, but he's not. I think the Meisner technique guy was Jewish, the acting coach, Sanford
Anyway,
Meisner, but not Randy. No.
I mean, Sinead O'Connor was a very important pop figure. And who was the other person you said died?
Pee Wee.
Oh,
Paul
Pee Wee
Rubin.
Herman.
Pee Wee Herman.
Paul Rubin. There's another Jewish name. He was fantastic. What a talent.
Yes, but so was Randy Meisner. Have you heard "Take It to the Limit"? Have you listened to "Take It to the Limit"?
Did he write that or just sang it?
Well, all the Eagles songs, I believe they credit all of them.
No.
I'm pretty sure if you look at who they credit, but I think Randy was the lead writer in that song. He certainly sang it, and he hit those high notes at the end.
Yeah, he was like but you know what? The high note guy is always, it's a weird position in those bands. I'm looking it up. So when is our guest coming?
Well, first of all,
5:45.
she'll be here when she's here, but
It's 5:46 now.
No,
she's a little
Yeah.
tardy.
you can tell her.
We haven't finished getting to know Maddie. Do you even know Maddie? Have you met Maddie? Know him?
No, I've only seen her. Have we met? Were introduced?
No, I don't think we've met in person. So
No.
nice to officially meet.
Well, Noam doesn't really
Nice to meet you.
like Noam. Noam doesn't really do a meet and greet with the new comics. Estee's 99.99%.
No, listen, the truth is half the time a new comic will be there and Liz and Esty won't even introduce me, to be honest. And then it's awkward for me, but I of course I want to meet everybody.
The guest today, by the way, Matt, is she here? I heard a bing bing.
Yeah, she's here. We can let her in.
Where's
Thank
Larry?
you.
I want to see Larry.
Larry's here, but
He's
my
there.
camera?
This was a guest that Larry suggested, and I don't know if it's a great fit for Maddie because Maddie's young, and this is a guest that is like a geriatrician.
Oh, right on.
But you have an old soul.
Oh,
I
thanks.
guess. But you didn't know who Robbie Roberts
There
is.
she is.
But Louise Aronson, MD, MFA, which I guess is Master of Fine Arts,
Yes.
is a leading geriatrician, as I just mentioned, writer, educator, professor of medicine at University of California, San Francisco, and author of the Pulitzer Prize finalist, Elderhood, Redefining Aging, Transforming Medicine, and Reimagining Life. Welcome, Louise, to our show. We're here with your friend, Larry Durlofsky. Is he your friend or is he a
Hi.
fan?
No, I'm a
That you-
fan. I just
Oh.
emailed her.
Oh, okay.
We
Well,
email a little bit.
So we're here with myself, Maddie Wiener, Noam Dworman, and Perry L. Ashenbrand. So the gang is all here.
Hi, everyone.
This is a very Jewish podcast.
Clearly.
It just happened, I mean, Rogan does what he does and we do what we do, but it just happens to turn out that way that we run heavily Jewish, but we'll be discussing ecumenical subjects. Anyhow, by the way, I just became a great uncle, speaking of aging, and that sort of hit home.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, but it hit home because it's another generation. And it's my niece's daughter.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, and I'll
Take it easy, Larry, please.
I'll probably see one more generation after her, but that's about it.
All right, you want to ask some questions to the guest, Dan?
Well, I thought maybe
We
she'd
get
say
started?
about my great niece and why I should rejoice instead of lamenting, another generation arriving.
Well, I think it's generally bad practice to tell someone how to feel, so I wasn't going to go there. But
Well, my lived experience, unlike other people, my lived experience is tenuous and deserves to be criticized.
but I've only known you
I
for
didn't
3
hear,
minutes,
like,
so I couldn't know that.
No, I mean, I hear like people talk about their lived experience. Your lived experience, oftentimes is bad.
Mhm.
People say, well, don't tell Jews what anti-Semitism is. Well, sometimes Jews go overboard and need to be told. Cool it. Fucking Jamie Foxx has no history of anti-Semitism. Let it go. But people say, oh, you don't tell Jews what anti-Semitism. Yeah, you should tell them when they're wrong. I think. Anyhow, Louise Aronson.
But are you wrong? Or are you just having an opinion? I mean, I think, I'm
I
not
think
saying
anybody
that.
should be able to criticize anything. And I hate when people say you have no right to criticize my lived experience, or no man should be able to tell a woman that her feelings are invalid. Well, man should be able to express his opinion. And if his opinion is ridiculous, tell him so. But,
Yeah, agreed. Well, I think there's a difference between criticism and commentary, but I think, we all are ambivalent about growing older, right? Because it's considered really negative in our society. And at the same time, the alternative is to die young, and that's hugely unattractive. So, it kind of puts us all in this spot. So my thought is it's actually what we want to do, although we'd like to do it in a certain way. Where do we sign up for that? But I also feel like our prejudices make it worse. They're sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like they make the extremes, the process of aging, and then certainly the extremes of old age much harder and scarier than they need to be. And the bad news there is that it's harder and scarier than it needs to be. And the good news is we could do something about it with a little will, which I think might be mounting now as boomers age. They're not as silent as the silent generation, not as stoic as the great generation. And I think that's going to do some good things for the world.
what
So what can we do about it? What can we do about it?
Well, so for most age groups, we talk about the good and the bad. But for older people, we tend to only talk about the bad. And I'm not saying there aren't some bad things. Can I run the way I used to run even 10 years ago? No. And is that disappointing? Yes. There are some things that are negative about it, but there's so many good things, such as most people are happier. Most people have a much clearer sense of their priorities and how they want to spend their time. And this has been shown across countries and across income and racial groups. Now, if you're in a very poor country, is your general level of happiness lower than in a richer country? Of course, so the data holds there. But there are some really nice things about this stage of life. But in contrast to parts of childhood and adulthood, with elderhood, we just kind of talk about the negatives, and then we also don't design a society that acknowledges the differences of age for good and ill, right? So then you go somewhere and you can't hear anything, so you stop going there. So then they say, oh, older people don't come here. It becomes self-fulfilling. Or you go to a park and there's really cool playgrounds for kids, and there's like a place for pickup basketball and something else. And then for old people, and what is old depends a little bit on where you're sitting at that moment, but there's benches, and benches are great for all of us, but that's blatant discrimination there, and we're starting to change that. There's starting to be really cool things.
What should there be? Shuffleboard?
No, but so you're also lumping all of old into the extremes. So one of the reasons I wanted to really get the term elderhood out there is when we say childhood, we don't just mean like little babies. We're talking babies through, depending on your perspective, at least the teens, but some people seem to stay in, young for a little longer. But when we talk about old age, we just talk about the extremes. So I wanted elderhood to represent the full diversity of older people. So, who's your moment, 60, 65, 70, and it probably depends on the person up. And there's as much variety between that 65-year-old and a 105-year-old as there is between a newborn and an 18-year-old, or between a 20-year-old and a 60-year-old. So why do we say shuffleboard or we say benches, but there's actually decades before that in which people are physiologically old and have different social and personal priorities. And so, like pickleball was invented for that, but now everybody's playing pickleball. So that's going. But there are some very cool parks, mostly in affluent neighborhoods, where there are actually these sort of sport complex things that help you work on your balance and really fun, games and things that sports that people can play without risking injury. Because there's the risk of injury, if you play pickup basketball, and some 20-year-old budget
tennis is
locks into you.
Tennis is a good sport for people in
tennis
that range.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm most worried about, if I could just one quick second, Noam, if I might, is I'm worried about if I get assaulted, the headline will read "Elderly man assaulted." Now, what age does
well,
that?
It shouldn't now because you're not elderly, but we also don't have language, right?
I've seen 60-year-olds called elderly in the headlines.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
the other weird thing is that people who are like 68 will call the 60-year-old elderly, but they don't think of it for themselves. So we need to start like living our truths and being more consistent. Like, okay, I'm an older adult now, but I'm one of the few women who doesn't dye my hair, so I look older than I am. But I'm not old. I have a mother who's 30 years older than I am. Now she's straight up old. Like that's elderly.
I do.
Look, I just want to say, I have no ambivalence about getting older. I hate it. I find it unacceptable. I'm 61. I feel basically the same. I wonder sometimes, like if I woke up just like this when I was 25, would I notice that I was different? I don't really think so. Maybe I would a little bit, but I don't feel run down. I'm energetic. I can keep up. I'm feeling great. The only thing is I don't remember names as well as I used to, and I find that very, very upsetting. But the idea of getting older, I find nothing does not make me happy at all. I have young kids. I dread not seeing them when they're older. I know the impending health issues are going to come, and every day I'm worried about it. And and well, it's funny to say about they should be nice to old people. There used to be a thing which like older men midlife crisis would do to make themselves feel better, and that was what they would find a young girlfriend. But
right.
Now society
that's actually been going on for millennia, and it's still quite popular.
But now society is taking that away from them. Like that's frowned upon now. Like, and that really works, I believe. But anyway, so I mean, pickleball is a poor substitute. but
Well, and you don't have to play pickleball. If you feel the way you felt 40 years ago, then there's nothing wrong with being 61, right?
yeah, I do. I know that the end is near. And if not the end, the end of feeling like I did now. I already have a high percentage of people my age who I don't take any medications. They take pills, they take this, they have knee problems, they've had problems, they've had surgeries. I'm not gonna, it's not gonna pass over me forever. You know, I
No.
know it.
But as a society, we could be
Yeah.
doing so much more. So instead of throwing pills at people,
Yeah.
imagine if your health insurance covered appropriate exercise, you know, which we know is like the best medicine for almost everything. But people don't have access to it, or they don't believe it makes a difference. Now, is it going to keep you from growing old and dying? Hell no. But it's going to make your growing old a lot
But
better for a lot longer.
Why do you need money for it? Can't you just do, I mean, from what I've read, and I also want to ask you something else, but what I've read, just calisthenics and things like this are more than effective.
That can help,
for,
but people don't know and believe it. And some people need coaching and assistance to do this. You know, we're maybe more privileged people who grow up with access to this information, et cetera. And we believe in our own agency. So maybe we do those things, but a lot of people really don't.
Now-
and that's part of the messaging and the cultural overlay, you know, and you really can delay a lot of the things we dread. And, you know, will they happen eventually? Yeah, but you know, do the right things, and with a little luck, and you know, you could have another 20, 30 good years. Who knows? And you know, I don't know your family history either.
Are you keeping up with the progress of these guys like, what's his name, Brian Johnson, who is trying, you know, was doing
Isn't he the lead singer of AC/DC?
plasma transplants with his son, and he's essentially throwing money at every single harebrained idea out there that might in some way reverse aging. And then this guy Peter Attia has a new book out now where he really goes deep dive into longevity and health span as opposed to lifespan. These are what's your take on all these efforts?
I think some of, you know, there have actually been similar efforts since, you know, there's been the written word, you know, go back to ancient Mesopotamia, the Greeks, etc. But
who was the explorer? Was it Cortez was looking for the fountain of youth?
No, Juan Ponce de Leon, I thought.
Ponce de Leon,
Ponce de Leon, you're right. So yeah, this has been going on forever. Do I think modern science has a better chance of hitting some of these things? Yes, but you know, then you have to think about the social and environmental implications. This is largely hyper-privileged white men trying not to die and getting very, very, very rich off other people's fear of aging and dying. Now, is that legit?
These are my people.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I think one can ask some really important ethical and environmental questions about that. And it's not going to get, you know, frankly, it's not going to get figured out in time for us. So yeah, okay, invest some of that. But if we invested that same amount of money, like billions and trillions in other things, like getting people proper food and exercise and changing the ageism that is embedded in every aspect of our culture, we would reap the benefits. It would be much faster.
Now, I want to say, Dan, let me tell you one thing, and then I'll shut up. Because this is interesting to me, because I feel like this overlay, and we see it almost on every subject, the whiteness, the privilege, whatever it is, it's so burdensome, and it's almost become, you know, de rigueur, like just a reflex. But, and I think this is valid. If I look back at other things, the first, I had a cell phone, I guess in the late 80s, whatever it was, and I was the only one who had it. I was a hyper-privileged white guy with a cell phone, but somebody, and that's who got them at first, although I wasn't even wealthy at the time at all, but I was one of the first people to get it. And now everybody has a cell phone. I remember my father was the first guy to have a calculator and a digital watch, and he and the well-to-do white guys would be the first people to have everything, everything and anything. And then through the wonders of, you know, progress in capitalism, in very short time, they become affordable and ubiquitous to all. And to worry about the fact that the wealthy, who it's not the white really shouldn't bother you, but that the wealthy, because who cares what color they are, that the wealthy have access to things before the less wealthy, and then to contemplate maybe stopping it because of that will foreclose what we know is inevitable, which has got to start somewhere. And then eventually the price drops drastically and everybody gets it. I imagine many medicines, I mean, even Viagra, like everything that's become available to everybody at one time was boutique and expensive and privileged. I don't see why that's something to beat ourselves up about. It can't be any other way.
I guess my problem with it, I mean, it could be any other way. You know,
It can't. No, it can't.
Sexism and racism. It could be if everybody had equal opportunities.
It can't.
But it's not going to be.
No,
right?
but it can't be any other way because the cost of to build a cell phone initially has to be expensive. It can't be immediately cheap and distributed to the planet Earth.
No, I'm not saying that. Like the income part, has to be. But who has the well, anyway, this is a whole other conversation from aging. But I guess I would say we know lots of things that could help pretty much everybody age better. And instead of investing in those things, we're investing billions and trillions, so much more money in these outlier things.
Right.
And that's because people find those things interesting or because of, self-interest or whatever. But if you were really picking what to do for the greater good, you would not pick that.
What would you pick?
Oh, you would pick like universal exercise and access to good food and a better sense of who you are, like getting people over age 60 to have a clear sense of purpose, which helps, stopping things that are leading to greater social isolation, which leads to horrible morbidity and mortality. There are so many things. And there are even programs once you reach that phase of frailty, and I agree with Atia that like, if we could expand the health span, that's just good for everyone, right? And of course, some people are going to do that first. And if they're willing to, try these things out, terrific. That's helpful to everyone. I agree. Whether it'll, it'll come true in our lifetimes, I'm not sure. Some of the things work, some don't. But we have a lot of proven programs that help people age well, and we do not pick them up. Instead, we invest in little molecules that people can take that will cost a fortune and, won't help most of us in our lifetimes. And maybe that's just the way progress is, but I don't think it's the ethical approach.
Yeah, I just first of all, it's a pleasure meeting you in this.
Yeah, you too.
I just wanted to touch back on Noam, your ongoing fear and upset about aging, and one of the things that was really significant for me in reading your book and in the definition of the term elderhood and childhood, adulthood, elderhood, is the significant portion of time in our lives that elderhood involves. And that by using resources in a positive way, we can make that significant portion better. And in terms of childhood, which I guess goes to adolescence, I for one, I don't know other people's experiences, I hated high school. It was horrible. It was torture. It was a torturous period for me. It's absolutely horrible.
Mine was horrible too, but it was the best years of my life.
Okay, well, okay.
Really?
I'm
I'd
kidding,
so
I'm
much
kidding.
rather be in my 60s than in my teens.
No, I'm kidding. But it was the best of times and the worst of times. My high school experience. It had moments of great highs.
Mine weren't
Let
horrible.
Larry
but
make his point.
it's
Larry's
just
on
better
point.
now.
Speaking of physical ills, I had acne and I was like, things were sprouting all over the place and my coordination was absolutely horrible. So there are absolutely periods of those other two hoods that I found to be really, really negative. And I fully expect that in elderhood, I'm going to find a lot of things that are negative. But one of the things that the book was so meaningful for me was pointing out the areas in which elderhood can be a positive part of your life. And it's going to happen and it's a big chunk. I never thought of it as such a large chunk.
I want to loop Maddie in because she's been sitting patiently, and I don't know if you find this interesting.
No, I find it fascinating.
Well, you're 30?
I'm 24.
24.
What do you know?
Holy cow.
We're all in the spectrum. But it's interesting what you were saying about like a sense of purpose, because like I feel like stand-up has changed the way that I think about aging, because like as a woman, I think you're taught to be very scared of aging because you're like, well, your core value to the world is your sex appeal, and you're going to quote unquote lose that as you age. But with stand up, it's like, I can't wait to be in my 50s. I will have been doing it 30 plus years. Like my favorite thing it's something that grows as you age instead of like declining. So it's kind of made me like look at those years of my life differently than I think I would if I were a woman in a different field. Maybe.
I think you should look.
That's
You know, you
interesting.
can look forward to the future, but never wish time to pass. I think it's a good general rule. You know, I
But
mean,
it's good to know that something might be better.
yeah,
Because
Yeah,
it
it's
might
something to look
but-
forward to.
but-
It's going to build. It's not just
Sure,
going to
but-
be
but
like,
also-
And women, like after menopause, on the one hand, you can still be sexy. Is it the same as being the nubile 20 whatever year old? Of course not. It's different. But there's also like people describe in huge numbers and in many studies a relief that you can only get to a certain place and not having to worry about that. You know, it's just worrying about who you are, how you feel, what you can do is actually hugely liberating for many women. So they sort of love the postmenopausal phase once the horrors and shock, you know, like I don't want to pretend that's a lot of fun either, but then there is this good part, right? So it's not all one or the other.
do we find that women that aging is more difficult for them because of what Maddie was saying? Because physical beauty is so important in our society, in every society, and maybe by nature. I don't know.
Definitely.
You know, so are women? Do they have a more difficult time coping with aging than men for that reason, or not?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of pressure, you know, with the hair dye, and you know, and for the book, I actually stopped dyeing my hair, and it's hard every day, right? Because you're in rooms and you look, you know, everybody's dyeing their hair, and you look older than they do, and everything tells you, everything about our culture says that's bad. So it's tough, but you know, there's a bunch of people trying to do a revolution. So anyway, so you take a hit.
You have very good skin. I mean, we are communicating via Zoom. But as near as I can tell, you I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fit and healthy, and
was old just because of your hair color.
Well, you also in the book you point out.
Well, they always want to help me out of the grocery store. I'm like, really? God, you see my muscles. Anyway,
in the book, you point out that a lot of these commercial things are defined as being anti-aging. And that in and of itself defines aging. It's sort of like anti-cancer. It's this horrible.
Well, a lot of things are like, if they're good, they're called youthful, right? So feel young again, instead of like, feel good at 60, feel good at 70, feel good at 80, which is what we all want, because you know, you can say 50 is the new 30, but anybody who's lived to be 50 knows that is just a crock. Right? It's different, but some things are better, right? And we just don't let ourselves enjoy them. And that ticking clock, yeah, you know, you wouldn't necessarily sign up for it, but it works in life much as it works in a movie or in a novel, which is that as the end gets closer, the people who are happiest use that knowledge to make better decisions. So the choices they make are more consistent with their values, with what's more meaningful. And most people have already raised their kids. So that sandwich pressure of career, children, maybe aging parents is gone. And there's this time where like, I could kind of do anything. And you can be ambitious in different ways. People who made money do art. People who did art decide to become entrepreneurs. Like, it's a time to reinvent yourself. We have these like extra 20 or 30 years. What are we going to do with them to have fun?
Maddie is 24. Right. I want to know briefly.
I just want to pour cold water on this whole Pollyannish conversation and say that there's nothing better in my life about being 61. It's not tremendously worse. It's not tremendously worse. I'm not, but I can't think of one thing. I said, well, thank God I'm not 40 again. I mean, yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, when I was 16, 17, I might've been an idiot, and maybe in my late 20s, I did well, but I was impetuous, and maybe I would like to have some of the wisdom. But I'm telling you something, 35 to 45, this is a fantastic. Yeah,
but not everybody is a nightclub owner, Noam. Not everybody's on stage playing guitar. This book, is there an asterisk on your book except for
Dworman?
Exactly. Yeah. They erased that in some copies, but don't be fooled. But what I would say is that you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So in the first place, you're at the very beginning of Elderhood, but there's a woman at Yale
That must
called
hurt.
Becca
No,
Levy
that hurt. Walk that off.
who's done. No, it's good to be a baby elder, right? So you've got the whole thing ahead of you.
But all right.
It depends a bit. But Becca Levy has done decades of research, and there are tons of others too. She's just the most well-known. And attitudes about aging actually determine how you age. So people who have negative attitudes like yours will get Alzheimer's earlier. And that's
Oh,
including
no,
markers in
no,
your
no,
cerebrospinal fluid. You have the
Mhm.
heart attack 7 years earlier, right? And you're less happy. So we're not being
that's my one
Pollyannish.
Achilles
I'm
heel.
not saying it's all good, but you're saying it's all bad. And I'm saying that's not true. And it may be lethal to you.
Now you just supercharged it.
Yeah, but that just, I mean, how do you, if you're a person that's
Truth is the
negative by
truth.
nature, telling them being negative is going to kill you, I don't think that's going to help.
Hold on. I'm not negative by nature.
Mhm.
This is the thing. What I'm not able to do, in my opinion, is convince myself to put on this happy face on something and work myself into a kind of what I consider to be like a false sense of euphoria or optimism, whatever. I'm not negative and I'm not pessimistic. I'm just saying that there's nothing that I prefer about being older, and I have trouble giving. Yeah, but this is better. I'm wiser. I'm this. Like I'm not able to talk myself into that.
No,
I'm
I've
not
done some
I'm not
Well, it doesn't have to
pessimistic.
be better.
Yeah.
It might just be fine. And
Yeah,
that's
it's
okay
fine.
too.
if I put
It's fine.
together everything
Yeah.
Noam said, my conclusion is he hates his kids.
No, I love my
No,
kids.
because you say your life's not better, yet you have kids now and they're young kids.
Well, okay,
And you
so
didn't have kids
absolutely,
when you were 40.
I get it. I get a deep satisfaction as a parent that I never had when I wasn't a parent. But of course, I'm an old parent. That's not related to a particular stage of aging. As a matter of fact, I might even be less psychologically healthy now if I was an empty nester and looking at what I'm, at least I actually do really truly have something to get up for every day that occupies much more than like 1,000 to 1 the business has. Like, just I worry about my kids and every little thing about them, and that actually does give me something to live for, and that's
Awesome.
nice. But yeah, but
That's
again,
good
that's
for
not
your health.
that's,
You're saying
that's very
that
good.
can't-
It's not about age, but that's real.
But that's still not better than chasing booty when you were 40.
No, it is better, but it is better. It is better.
Could I?
Maddie, please.
Well, what we were
You
saying
need the
earlier.
perspective of the younger generation.
Well, like the whole debate that we were having of, like, not to get it back to the privilege aspect of it, but just the thing of like the length of life versus the depth of life, if that's a way to put it. Like, I was reading this. Have you read How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell? It's called How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy. And she has this really interesting quote where she's talking about how, if that kind of, driving force of people trying to live forever is to have like infinite moments in your life. She's like, well, if you really pay attention and are present, you can have like infinite moments in an hour, in a minute. Like, essentially you can make your life feel infinite on the y-axis instead of the x-axis, if that makes sense. Like,
Can you explain the axes to Perry Alfred?
Oh,
my friend
Sorry.
had this app on his phone that showed him, like, you use Instagram for a week, and then at the end of it tells you how many years of your life you'll spend on Instagram if you keep going at it the same way. And it was going to be like, he's also in his 20s, and it was going to be like 18 years of his life was going to be spent looking at Instagram before he died. And it's like, yeah, you could try to tack on another 20 at the end, or you could fix what you're doing now and get another 20 years of life in the life you already have, if that makes
I guess you
sense.
could also take less naps, maybe. No, because that's something that could tack a couple years of living on, I suppose.
But it brings on bad sleep, brings on Alzheimer's.
But it just seems interesting to aging.
I
'cause
said
it's like,
less napping. I didn't say cut your sleep.
But well, it's related. Yeah.
but if you don't look at those, like, whatever last 20 years of your life as lost time, but as like another 20 years, I don't know. It's just like an interesting way to look at it, as like, I felt like that book kind of tied into what we were talking about.
Yeah. And you're so right. We now live 20, 30, 40, depending on where you live and who you are, years longer than we did, that people did in the US a century ago. So the question is, what are you going to do with those years? Some people are having kids. Some people are having different careers. Some people are just enjoying life without the usual stressors. I mean, what I find a lot of people do as they move into those years is they do all the things that my friends and colleagues are always complaining they don't have time for, but make them happiest. You know, so that makes people happy.
Yeah, we have a
Yes.
doorbell going off, but Maddie, yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that people, or like, have you found that when people become more comfortable with aging, they also become more comfortable with the idea of death?
Oh, that's such a good question. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And sometimes people are more comfortable with death. In medicine, that's certainly true. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but relatively more people have gone into sort of hospice and palliative care than into geriatrics, because there are things about aging that I think people find more scary. It's also long, it's really varied. Whereas death, if you can help someone do it well, this is totally crass, but it is kind of like a checkbox. Like, oh, this thing had to happen. It wasn't a good thing, but I made it happen well, and so I feel good. You know, it's just cleaner and neater, and you have that sort of sooner gratification. So some people are more comfortable, but as they age, you know, I see huge variability. Some people are okay with death, particularly really old people. Like, old people are like, do I want to die? No, but I'm in my 90s, so I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't think it would be a tragedy. You know, so some of them have true wisdom, and other people are scared out of their minds.
To me, everything that's scary about death is associated with burial. Think about it: rotting corpses, coffins, tombstones, cemeteries, right? All the horrible shit.
But see, you're dead for that. It's the shit that comes before that that scares me. I don't want to be in pain or like lying in my own.
But I'm saying like cremation. No. Cremation, you know, seems okay. If you know, that's like you're not even dead. You're just not there. You're not rotting. There's no tombstone.
Yeah. But if you're rotting and don't know you're rotting, it's sort of like the tree in the forest. I'm thinking about it
respectively. I'm saying it's what's daunting about it, you know, when you think of anyway. Maddie, do you have these thoughts? So you're at 24. I think it's called thanatophobia, right? Fear of death. Is
that?
Yeah, I mean,
you think you have a whole library about thanatophobia. Go ahead.
I definitely am a very anxious person.
I think it's thanatophobia. I just pulled that out of my ass.
Well, you remember what's his name?
Remind me, am I wrong? Is it called thanatophobia? Oh yeah.
Tom Green. All right, you got me. Tom Green was here at the cellar, and he's, I guess, a little bit north of my age, or maybe he is my age. I don't know. But you remember Tom Green from the 90s? Do you remember him, Maddie? He's a guy from the 90s. Anyway, he was a big star in the 90s. He sort of faded away a little bit, but now I guess he has a podcast that's very popular. Anyway, he was on stage and he says, you know what? He said to a young person, he says, you know what? I don't have the fears that you have. I don't fear, you know, like dying young. Not going to happen to me. I don't know. I think that some people have that attitude. I mean, once you're a certain age, you're not going to die young anymore. So I don't know if that's helpful at all.
All right, let me tell you.
What's young? If you died now, wouldn't you feel like you died too young?
Yeah,
you didn't die young like Maddie young, but it's still too soon.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. But it's not a horrific tragedy.
I want to explain something.
It's too soon, but it's not a horrifying tragedy either.
Let me explain something to all of you, including Larry. Okay.
Yeah.
Your correlation is not causation. This is what it is.
Go ahead.
Because I've seen this in person. Certain people have certain innate optimistic outlooks on life, and certain people have certain innate pessimistic outlooks on life. And whatever stage of life they're in, that becomes the causation for it. So the people who are really unhappy about getting old, they were unhappy about something else in their 40s. They were unhappy about something else in their 30s. They're unhappy about something else in their 20s. I known people, two of them, because one of them who died, and one who we know him, Hatem, with a heart transplant. These were people who were, for long periods of time, were living with horrible, deadly diseases, you know, day to day. These people were happy. They were cheerful. They were friendly. You call them up, they would talk about the weather, meaning like, you know, they weren't like, you know, talking about their health all the time. How you doing? I mean, just amazing. And I used to think it was strength. Like, how do they get the strength to be that way? And then it occurred to me, that's just the way they are. And I think that so much of everything in life, and we learn this more and more, is just about our innate dispositions. And my disposition is, you know, it's just not great for this kind of thing.
But studies over the lifetime do suggest, from everything I've read, that people fear death less when they're in their 70s and 80s than those same people did in their 20s and 30s, and they
All right,
might
well,
even be.
well, okay, then maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're
They're
right
not
and you're
mutually
wrong.
exclusive. Yeah.
I think you're right in that, insofar as, yeah, certain people like hot tem and people that have amazing dispositions no matter what life throws at them.
Yeah.
But I also think that people are more accepting of death as they age in general.
No, but don't you think that when you're put into a position like Hatem, that suddenly you appreciate things more that maybe somebody like you takes for granted? And I don't mean you specifically necessarily.
You'd be right if you
No.
meant me specifically.
He has a disposition. I'm telling you, he has a disposition. I would kill for this disposition. We've all known people like that. Look at Dan. Do you think if Dan was walking around with an LVAD, he would be
What?
somehow?
With a what?
Was that what he called an
That's
LVAD? It's like a-
ventricular
Ventricular
assistive
device.
device.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
I mean,
disaster.
waiting for a transplant, waiting for that, and worrying about the power going out in this building because they has like who could live with this stress? Dan would be fit to be tied. Dan would be morose. He'd probably be funnier than ever, but he would not be positive about it. It's not in him to be positive. It's just not. And I don't think
Tragically,
You're also
correct.
suggesting that nobody can change ever. And,
that's-
and
yes,
yes, we
yes, I
do have
am.
an innate disposition and people can learn and grow.
I don't believe they change really. I mean, I can't say nobody, but not a lot. It's when somebody actually changes. I mean, changes is an interesting word. Can they, through self-discipline, display difference?
Or even feel.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. You're still
But
innate.
inside, they're like, yeah.
Not everybody, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
I have a
And
question
maybe-
related to. Oh, sorry.
Madeline.
I actually
Is it
think,
Madeline?
so Maddie, and I
Madeline?
think that change is easier in the negative direction. I think trauma, having something do something terrible to you, this can change you in a way that you never come back to your better self. The opposite is much harder. Like if you adopt a pet that's been beaten, eventually maybe you can get them to be better, but it's way easier to create the scared pet and traumatize the rest of its life. That life is like that. So go ahead. Sorry, Maddie.
Madeline.
I was going to ask, we were talking about like the different attitudes towards it. I'm curious if you found that people have different attitudes towards aging depending on if their religious beliefs lead them to believe there's an afterlife. Like
Maddie's
if they see
killing
it
it.
as a transitional phase
No, you're
or like
killing it with
this
these
is the
questions.
last
These are
one.
the
For
best-
real? Okay,
These
cool.
are the best
Yeah.
questions we've got.
Oh,
really
in
good
my
ones.
opinion.
I'm genuinely like really curious because like
Gosh.
if you saw aging as like just the next step till forever, then it doesn't seem like as big of a deal. But if you see it as like the final encore, that's like a pretty big, that's a lot of pressure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, another great question. And yes and no. It's so interesting. A lot of people do find solace in thinking there's something else, but that doesn't necessarily eliminate their fear of death because you don't really know what that other thing is. It's a belief more than a like, oh, I'm moving to, Boston, the sense of what Boston is, right?
In your gut, your body's still like, we're disappearing.
So sometimes do that and you'll still see people panic. And then there are other people who kind of go the other way. They're scared and then they kind of get closer and they realize like, I thought this would be worse, but I'm kind of still me. And, especially, we can't control everyone's pain, but a lot of people. So if they're getting good care and they're comfortable, or maybe they're having like these meaningful interactions with people, they're like, you know what, I can do this. So it actually moves in both directions. I think the further you are from it, the more reassuring the religion is, because you have this notion. But as you get closer, sometimes maybe it's that thing of who you are comes into play as well.
And by the
I
way,
have a
there is nothing after you die. In case anyone don't know. Go ahead.
That's not true.
Oh God.
Do you find that people who are terminally ill and have made peace with it, like does that when the people around them, I've heard stories of friends who have a terminal illness and have really made peace with it in a way that perhaps is inconceivable to us.
It does happen. I mean, does it happen to everyone? No, not at all. But sometimes it happens and it's really incredible. And it doesn't mean the people around them aren't sad. And it doesn't mean they're thinking like, oh, yay, I'm dying. Like I mean, I want to be, it's not all butterflies and roses. But there is a degree to which the tension in the room. So I've been in a lot of rooms with a lot of people who are dying, goes way down, and there is just a peacefulness and a bonding. And actually, speaking of comedy, in the families or friend groups where it's going really well, there's often, when it's going that well and the person's come to terms with it, there's also some great humor in those moments, either among the people waiting or whatever. And I feel like, yes, that diffuses some of the tension, but it's also when they feel like we don't want this, but it's actually going pretty well, that people feel comfortable with each other and connected in a way that allows a humor that's pretty terrific, and that brings them further close together.
So let me tell you,
Right.
so you'll like this, Dan. So I got to spend 3 months with my father in the hospital during the 3 months that he was dying. I slept there every night. And it's exactly what you said. It was very, very important time, but there's a lot of humor. But Dan, Dino Badala, I don't know, Louise, if you know Dino Badala. Now he's like a liberal pundit, but he was a comedian at the time, and he's a Palestinian. And my father and he would always argue about Israel and Palestine. Anyway, and Dino Badala came to the hospital to visit my father, and my father said, "Dean, I'm dying of cancer." And Dean says, "I know." My father said, "I always wish this would happen to you."
That's classic. Totally. And then everybody calms down, and you also have the release of the tension building up. It's perfect.
It was so funny.
That's awesome.
And he really played it perfectly.
Your father was
Happened to you. So yeah, but so he was able to make jokes. So yeah, it was great. But he was something special.
He was 72, which at the time seemed like an old man, but now it's like, ooh, that's kind of young to go.
But he never seemed old. He was old, he looked 72, but if he was if you took the exact same guy and had put it in a 30-year-old body, nobody would have ever detected that he was like, what's up with this 30-year-old? He seems weird. Oh, before we go, we should actually talk about that because, Joe Biden's, how he's acting as an 80-year-old or 79, whatever. Is he 79? Is he 80?
I think he's 80.
Yeah,
I think he
part of
turned
the
80.
public works process of like benches and stuff probably shouldn't be like free presidential run, like for elderly welfare. Like, let's get you in a little playpen somewhere.
Well, that's it. So
And that's not even talking about what they've done to his face, which is
well,
so
one time
upsetting.
he was on a show this when he was running for president. He forgot to put his dentures in, and there was like anyway. So and it's very, very political to talk about him. Obviously, with his enemies, the more they hate Joe Biden, the more just merciless and low class and ridiculing they are of any little mistake he makes, and the more they love Joe Biden, the more seemingly just insincere they are about denying that we're seeing an old man up there. My personal opinion is that he doesn't seem to have dementia. He seems to be kind of like my grandmother was when she hit her 80s, which was, slowed down a lot, wouldn't be quick on the uptake on things, would be forgetful, certainly could have a totally normal conversation with her and enjoy her, and she'd remember the next day. She was not sick in the head, but she was old, as opposed to someone like Fauci,
or Pelosi. They're fine.
Well, I don't know Pelosi. Yeah, Pelosi seems fine, but Fauci really seems like this guy is amazingly sharp at 83. He remembers the new pathogen. He remembers the stats. I mean, Joe Biden is not doing that. And
Fauci can go out running every morning, and Biden, that probably is not what he should be doing now.
Yeah, and this is the luck of the draw. I mean, I'm sure that the way you live your life contributes to it, but it's very much also the luck of the draw. And
it's a bigger contributor than genetics for most people, actually.
Biden also had a
what would you like to tell us about how we should look at Biden, how we should look at his interpret his ability still to be the chief executive, despite the fact that he is obviously, at least in my opinion, he's slowed down. If you disagree, certainly you should say so. And all
no, I don't disagree. I mean, I think he's showing some signs. The way he walks. There are clear age changes in his movements, thinking you can have no dementia, and as your brain gets older, it's what you said about not remembering certain words. I've had that too, and it's incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. So he's much older than we are, so he has it more so, and he might have it more so than some people. I think we as a society haven't figured out how to deal with that transition, which happens for different people at different times, right? So an 80-year-old Fauci is a different animal than an 80-year-old, somebody else. And we haven't found a way of doing that. Do you there are cultures that say, let's just set this arbitrary cutoff, and you can look at it on the other end, right? I mean, you have this crazy situation where I live in California. So at 18, you can go off to war and be killed, but you cannot buy a beer. Like,
Right.
What the hell is that, right? So we pick these arbitrary ages, and maybe we have to do that for older people too, or maybe we have a series of tests like a driver's license thing, but that's a little awkward. I think we really don't know how to deal with it because this has not come up. It used to be the exception, and now, look at what's happened with McConnell or Feinstein, or, you can do Trump even, and then, but age becomes the issue. Age should be part of the discussion, but also qualification for office, crimes committed. I'm in San Francisco, so imagine how that goes. Like, would you prefer someone who's a little slower or someone who's a criminal? Take your pick. But I think we might sometimes be having the wrong conversations. And until we have ways of doing this, people have to police themselves better. I think people should maybe, retire before they're embarrassing themselves or pushed out. Like, go out on top and plan something to do next.
Would you think that an age of 70, 72 or something would be a good maximum age by statute or by constitutional for a president?
I think that might be young because presidents tend to be people of privilege, and people of privilege tend to have longer health spans. And there are tons of people in their 70s, running companies, in office, doing well. So, I'm not sure I would do it that young.
The reason I would what I would counter with there, and I don't know if you thought about it the way I'm thinking about it, is that at a certain point, it's not that they weren't healthy when they took office, but that the risk that would, and this happened probably with Reagan.
I've discussed this in articles.
That in those years,
right,
the likelihood that they would then begin to show the signs of cognitive decline, that's when it would occur, and to uncover it and to act on it is so fraught politically that it's not worth the risk, because something terrible can happen after all.
I think soon we're going to have ways of measuring. There are some things that are coming along that will make it easier to get a sense of what might happen in the next 4 years.
I mean, Trump remembered those 5 words: man, woman, camera. Remember, giraffe. What were they, Dan?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, the risk of dementia is low in your 60s, and it goes up. So if you're going to make that argument, is it 75? Is it 80? 75. But you also have to think about what are the human resources, that you might be throwing away by picking an arbitrary age. But you have to pick an average. You might be.
But what we know empirically from real life. I get what you're saying, and that would be serious. But what we actually know, at least what we've seen in our lifetimes, is that it's the opposite. You can't get these people off the stage.
Oh, completely.
And it's the young human resources which we're denying ourselves because they're so entrenched.
Speaking of age limits, Speaking of age limits, Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, etc. You pick the age limit. So my question to the younger generation: what is your upper limit on Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, etc.?
Oh my gosh. Well, sometimes just out of curiosity, I put it up to like 40 just to see what it looks like for these guys to shoot their shot, because it's a different pitch. Like the guys in their 20s are like, I want to have a little fun. But you see a guy, well, because I'm seeing a guy who is in his 40s who has his thing set to see someone who's 24. And that's just a fascinating, like anthropological. I'm not matching with them, but I am enjoying like reading them, because they're writing essays, because it's like they're trying to make a buzzer beater across the court shot. You know what I mean? Before they hit 41. No, but I'm dating mostly people in their late 20s, early 30s, I'd say.
But in terms of physical attraction, I mean, Des Bishop, you can't deny, is a hot guy, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, intelligence is like incredibly attractive. And I think that's like something you get as you get older. So like, I wouldn't rule out, okay, am I going to regret saying this publicly?
Maybe.
I wouldn't rule out if there was a guy who was like in his 40s. I'm not going to say that would be impossible for me. I don't know about dating, but like,
But just
Hugh, you know,
Some
what?
guys do get
Yes.
better looking, for
Hugh
sure.
Laurie in House.
I don't
Oh
know.
my gosh. Have you seen House?
I haven't seen it.
I'm like, he's probably 40 or 50 in that. Yeah, I'm sold. So yes, to answer the question, yeah. That for sure could work for me. Cillian Murphy and Oppenheimer. Yeah. No, I'm good with that.
Nicole,
this is not your expertise, but I will tell you, the way women look at older men is just completely different from the way men look at older women, unfortunately. But that's just a fact of life. In my experience, yeah, I can see on a dating app, women will be like, why would they go higher than 40? But in terms of if they meet somebody in everyday life, like they will go much higher than they ever thought they would, and they without even a thought. I mean, we see it all the time: women dating much older men. I believe this is also just in our DNA.
Nicole, you're not obligated to respond or add anything, but you certainly are welcome to do so at this time.
Well, I haven't had a dating app in a minute, but this reminded me that in college, me and a few of my friends downloaded the Seeking Arrangement app, which is like the sugar daddy app, or like the original one. And the second I opened it, the first face was that of an 80-year-old man. And I immediately deleted it because I was like, this is not, I don't need the tuition money that
And
bad.
it wasn't.
you know?
It was not Al Pacino.
No, it wasn't.
That's incredible.
Well, but that was you were. I mean, I can't imagine Nicole doing this, but it sounds maybe just on a lark. But that's like a cynical thing, a sugar daddy. I'm saying that when a 30-year-old woman establishes a relationship in an organic way with a 55-year-old man or a 55-year-old man over the course of a few months, let's say, that 25-year-old woman will very often fall into attraction to that much older man, and in a very natural way, and it's sincere. And the opposite direction doesn't happen nearly as often. I guess it can happen. It does happen, but yeah.
Well,
Not a dating app.
Best years are almost behind me, and it sounds like I should.
No,
no. When I hit 45, I'm going to join a farm upstate with the other dogs, and
I think the sexiest age for a man, I would say, 40. Any comments?
So numeric.
I think it varies tremendously.
Pardon? No.
And also, there are women who are like,
For me,
there really are women who are like older who are still like massively attractive.
Yeah, no, I get some in my office. I'm like, those are really your feet, or those are really your breasts. I don't say this out loud, but you do. It's like, wow.
my wife is 49. She's super hot, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done. Larry, since you facilitated all this, is it something you want to satisfy yourself with, or is Larry still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Still here.
I'm here.
Wake up, Larry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I was just I was thinking about my options. I just, in the book, you talk about some of your clinical experiences and going into socioeconomically deprived areas and seeing patients. And I know your dad was a doc as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that kindness from him, or do you have that naturally? That was such a noble focus in terms of your career, to be visiting people in their homes.
Yeah, no, he I don't know that it's noble. Like, people often say that because they can't imagine doing what I do, but I do it because I like it. Okay. Like, my dad did, he did research on animals and eye surgery, and shoot me now. Like, if I had to just deal with eyes and not the interesting human being and sociocultural context around them, like, boring. It's like in Being Mortal, Atul Gawande has this thing about geriatrics. They just do whatever. Like, he does surgery on the thyroid. the thyroid is tiny. Like he does it over and over again. I think we do what appeals to us. I mean, I love meeting different sorts of people. I mean, and I like making a difference. That makes me feel good about me. It's interesting to me. So I really enjoyed that, and much more than I would enjoy like being in the OR and like cutting people open. I mean, my first day, this is in the book too. The first day on surgery, I was like, this is freaking amazing. The second day, I was like, this looks just like yesterday. So you do what makes, I don't think it's noble. I think it's just me.
I also want to add
what
that
I like.
I'm such a fan that I'm about to start reading your short stories. So
okay, thank you. My first foray.
Okay, well, that was great.
Yeah, I thought so. Thank you, Larry, for facilitating this. It turned out to be, I think, a good discussion.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Welcome.
I guess podcast at comedyseller.com for comments, questions, suggestions, criticisms, and so on. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.